What's up, ladies and gentlemen? This is David Benjamin. I want to talk about a topic today that no one wants to talk about, but yet everyone in life faces this with extreme difficulty and extreme uncertainty. And it's something that we all face, yet no one really wants to talk about it, which is why I am here. Your friendly neighborhood hope dealer, showing up to bring positive light and good, intentional, mindful energy towards something that we all need and actually deeply desire, whether we realize it or not. And when we embrace and learn this lesson, our life beautifully unfolds in such a magnificent way that we will wonder why we hesitated and waited so long to take action on this principle. So the principle that I'm talking about today is none other than the topic of don't run, forgiveness. Forgiveness. It's very, very difficult. It's something we all face in life. It's one of the hardest things, yet at the end of the day, it's something we have to learn how to do. So there's three different sort of concepts or ideas around forgiveness. Some of these concepts I want to break down a little bit more to sort of distill what they mean and my perspective on them. And these are all ideas connected to forgiveness. And then other ideas I want to create more context around and create more potential value and understanding and coherence so that the value of these different ideas and concepts can be more solidified and you can take those home, take those to the forgiveness bank and benefit from these and get dividends for life, baby. Yeah! All right, here we go. So the first concept, forgive and forget. Okay, so this is one of the things that we've all heard it before. It's like this light, sort of Disney-like, airy-fairy idea of forgiveness, right? Forgive and forget. Forgive and forget. Like we even say it like that. Just forgive and forget. Just forget. It's not a big deal. Just forgive and forget. While the idea and value of forgiveness is incredibly valuable, to forgive and forget is actually quite dangerous. Let me break it down a little bit more. Forgiveness is a spiritual understanding as compassion and empathy bridge you to your pain, trauma, and or oppression, not only to the person who victimized you, but to the actual trauma itself. It's building an empathetic and compassionate bridge between the two, right? That's quite literally, spiritually, what forgiveness is. It's the development of the capacity of empathy and compassion for the trauma you experienced and towards the person who oppressed you. Now, as challenging as that may sound, there's also a lot of reward and value and benefit and blessing in doing that because you build something that most people do not have. And when you can build something that most people do not have, you set yourself apart in a category that is rarer and that can benefit from life in ways that most people cannot. So putting that aside, forgiveness is valuable, and we can dive more into the logistics and mechanics and beauty of that later. Forgetting something that occurred is to enable what I call, or what many people sort of call, willful ignorance. So if I were to do something that hurt you or that oppressed you, and you were to forgive me and forget, what you're doing in the forgiveness is good, but the forgetting is essentially allowing me to encroach on you again, to recreate the same trauma, to recreate the same experience, the same tendencies, whatever it may be. And this is something that is dangerous, because if I enable you, or you enable me, by simply forgetting what occurred, that lesson isn't remembered. So part of the lesson in trauma is forgiveness, but part of the lesson in trauma is also recognizing habits and patterns so that the same things don't occur again. There's a reason why people go from toxic relationship to toxic relationship to toxic relationship to toxic relationship. There are lessons that are not being learned, so those lessons happen to be repeated over and over again, and they keep hitting these people harder and harder until they learn the hard way. You don't have to learn the hard way. You can learn the easy way. All it takes is mindfulness, willingness, and the ability to listen and self-reflect. That's really all that it takes. So to forget something that you have forgiven is dangerous because it doesn't allow you to remember the lesson or the value in those experiences. However, there is a caveat here. To forgive and forget, it's a sort of noble gesture, but what you really want to do is forgive and remember. However, that remembrance does not mean holding a grudge. That remembrance does not mean holding negative energy. That remembrance does not mean reminding that person of their mistakes or fuck-ups over and over. That remembrance is simply a lesson for you internally to recognize and understand and comprehend and see what's really going on in the exterior world. With that being said, there is a barrier here between what is known as conditional forgiveness and unconditional forgiveness. Conditional forgiveness would say something like, I forgive you, but fill in the blank. It better not happen again, but if you do this again, I'll never forgive you, but, whatever. I forgive you, but, or I will forgive you when, right? Conditional forgiveness has a before or after to the forgiveness. There's a tangent, there's a connection there that hinges the forgiveness upon future action, future, whatever, and it's not true forgiveness in that moment. And the danger in that is that when you conditionally forgive someone, you're quite literally enabling them in that way too. So you're forgiving them, but you're conditionally forgiving them, and then you're sort of remembering and, sort of like consciously setting them up for failure because that's what your focus is on. So even if they're doing better, even if they're improving, because you've conditionally forgiven them, in your mind, you're remembering the mistakes, the screw-ups, this is and that. So any hint you see of that becomes magnified and blown out of proportion, and that doesn't allow you to deeply and truly forgive that individual for the wrongdoing, which that's a form of unconditional forgiveness. That's deep, ever-flowing, rich, abundant forgiveness that comes from none other than the source of true love itself, agape love, right? Unconditional love. From unconditional love comes unconditional forgiveness, or from unconditional forgiveness comes unconditional love. So that's the first concept I want to sort of dispel. The idea of forgiveness is valuable, but forgetting is something that is dangerous because you're bound to repeat these mistakes and or attract people into your life that continue to infringe on you in certain ways because you're not learning the lesson and you're not remembering that, okay, there's patterns, there's habits here. I need to recognize those. It doesn't mean I'm not able to unconditionally forgive the person that did this to me in the past, but it does mean that I need to forgive moving forward and remember to recognize the habits and patterns that are associated with this trauma, this pain, this hurt, whatever it is, and ensure that I don't put myself into a situation that's toxic, dangerous, fill in the blank, right? So on and so forth. So that's the first thing I want to talk about. The second thing I want to talk about is this idea that forgiveness is for the other person. It's the strangest idea. I don't know where it came from, and it's really holding a lot of people back and enslaved emotionally to what is really just bitterness and resentment and anger, and even fear, which is going to affect your physical health, your liver, your kidneys, right? These organs that deal with anger and fear, like these organs are reduced in health and vitality when we are emotionally bondaged to the ideas of trauma, pain, suffering, anger, bitterness, resentment, right? These are things that we hold on to if we don't forgive. So when people think that forgiveness is for the other person, this is where the lie comes in. The lie that forgiveness isn't worth it. The lie that forgiveness is for them. This is the mind frame. The mind frame is simple. If I forgive so-and-so for wrongdoing that occurred, I am justifying and saying that what they did was okay. I'm basically saying, that physical abuse, that sexual abuse, that verbal abuse, that emotional abuse, that theft, that whatever it is, that is okay. The definition of forgiveness has absolutely nothing to do with the actions of an oppressor, right? That is called an attack. That is called, right? Like these are different ideas and concepts. We need to detach forgiveness from the idea of justifying wrongdoing because it has absolutely nothing to do with justifying wrong behavior or wrongdoing. What forgiveness does, think about the word forgiveness. give. You're doing something for the purpose of giving, okay? So forgiveness is a gift. Forgiveness is for you for the purpose of giving the bullshit and the trauma back to the oppressor. It's as simple as that. Forgiveness is you. It's for the purpose of you giving your trauma and your bullshit and all the things that hurt you back to the oppressor. And even more accurately, beyond that, it's giving it up. It's letting it go and letting God, right? It's like completely releasing and allowing that pain, that bitterness, that hurt, that resentment, that anger, all of the poison that was inflicted on you that you are holding on to because you didn't know how to release it and discharge of it in a healthy way. Forgiveness is the detoxification of your emotional, psychological body and physical body, your nervous system, your organs, everything. It's the removal of that poison from your body. It's the whole idea of holding on to anger and bitterness is like swallowing a pill, of poison and expecting the other person to die. That's not how it works. So when we have trauma that's inflicted on us, it isn't necessarily it's not like it's our fault, right? Like if something happened to you that was traumatic, it wasn't your fault. You didn't deserve that. No one deserves to be, to have trauma, pain, physical, emotional, sexual trauma inflicted on them. However, just because something isn't your fault does not mean it is not your responsibility. For those of you that are parents, you know this very well. If your child does something that was their fault and they don't know how to fix it, and maybe it's in a public place or it's in your home, private or public place, it really doesn't matter. As the parent, it is your responsibility to fix and rectify that situation because your child does not have the mental or emotional intelligence to properly remedy the situation. So just as parents have learned the lesson, just because it's not my fault doesn't mean it's my responsibility. We as adults need to embrace that idea for personal trauma inflicted upon our lives because it wasn't our fault, but it is our responsibility. And the benefit to us in this equation is that when we heal from the trauma, when we heal from the hurt, when we heal from the wrongdoing, guess what we get as a gift? We receive empathy, compassion, and love at a much higher capacity than we have ever had before in our life up until that moment. I want you to think about that concept. Just think about that idea. And I'll say it one more time because I want to hear myself and remember this just for me. When we choose to forgive unconditionally and let go with a deep reservoir of love, empathy, and compassion, what we are doing is we're exercising our own right, our own capacity to have a higher volume of empathy, compassion, and love in our own life individually. What does that mean as an equation? In this equation, you are receiving more compassion, empathy, and love. And your ability to have compassion for more people, to have empathy for more people, and to have love for more people, and at a deeper level, grows. You are growing. You get to grow in love. What the fuck else is there? So with that being said, you get to grow in love. That's a really good deal. You get to grow in love. Hear me. You get to grow in love, compassion, and empathy. And the gift to you in that equation is you get to receive so much love because you chose to be open in a world that is closed. And when you choose to be open in a world that is closed, you get to benefit from those that choose to be open also. Those that choose to share love, those that choose to give love, those that choose to receive love, those that go deep in love, not those that go shallow. So forgiveness is not for them. It's not for your oppressor. It's for you. It's your own gift. You get more love, you get more empathy, you get more compassion for yourself as a baseline, but then from there, that's what you attract into your reality, because that's who you're becoming. And who you are becoming is who you attract. And I don't know about you, but I want to become someone that has a deep reservoir of love, compassion, and empathy for the rest of my life, and I don't want any fucking thing tainting that beauty. Ever. So, okay, I hope that drives the point home. I'm gonna stop preaching. Because for me personally, it's frustrating and upsetting to me that people believe that forgiveness isn't worth their time, energy, or effort. Like the lie that holding on to bitterness, anger, resentment is somehow worth it, and that you get something out of holding on to emotional poison doesn't add up. It doesn't compute. It's not mathematically correct in the universe that we live in. It does not work. If you desire more of something, you have to become more of that in order to attract it, and in order to give yourself that gift, right? So I hope that brings clarity to at least one person. I don't care if it's one person. If this whole video moves one person's heart or mind in a little way that has a little significance, that means the world to me. Because otherwise I'm just driving through like Iowa or something. Or no, Nebraska. Wherever I am. So that's the second thing of the two. I know this is a long video. The third thing I want to talk about is this idea that in the forgiveness process, and it's attached to what I just shared. When we forgive someone, it like justifies their behavior. It does not. That is a myth. There is no connection to justifying their behavior. Forgiveness is allowing yourself the compassion and empathy and love to forgive the wrongdoing. It doesn't justify it. It gives it back, right? It releases it from your body. So, but going through that, there's a lot of wisdom in that. There's a lot of understanding. There's a lot of love, compassion, and empathy that can be developed. Or on the flip side of the coin, you can develop more bitterness, anger, resentment, envy, jealousy, all these other unhealthy traits. So it's literally a choice which traits you develop and which traits you want to develop. So the third thing I want to talk about is this idea that when you forgive someone, it nullifies any consequences that may incur on them for their wrongdoing. Now, this is sort of attached to the idea that when you forgive someone, it justifies their wrongdoing. So it almost, and it's this lie, but it almost feels like, well, if I forgive them, then it's like saying it's okay that they raped me, or it's okay that they physically abused me, or it's okay that they belittled me for years, or whatever it is. So, but that's not true. Consequence in and of itself is a completely different topic, right? So if you kill someone and you go to court, you better believe, as long as there's evidence, your ass is going to jail. And that's the consequence of murder, right? Like there's a consequence to your actions. However, it does not mean that the killing or the abuse or whatever it is, like literally whatever it is, cannot be forgiven. I saw this story one time on, I forget where it was, somewhere online, video article, something. And this woman, her son was like brutally murdered, like in a, drive-by shooting. Like, I don't even think he was a part of this, whatever. Like he was just an innocent bystander, whatever, something like that. Or no. I think it was an intentional kill, like he was intentionally killed, but it was like, it just didn't make any sense, right? Like it was completely, like it wasn't like this kid was like in a gang or like, had like shot up someone and they were coming after. Like it was literally like, it was a senseless killing, right? A senseless killing. And like, from what I remember, like this person was like delivering a pizza, and the person followed them and got out of the car and shot them while they were like on their shift delivering a pizza. I think, if I recall correctly. And the mother of the victim, the mother of the like teen, I think he was like 17, the kid that was shot, went to court, for her son's murder, and intentionally went up to the killer and shared that she forgave him. Now, I have no idea how any parent could have that much compassion, love, and empathy to almost immediately forgive someone who killed their child. I like the amount of compassion and empathy that would take. It makes me physically uncomfortable, if I'm being completely honest. Like, I would literally want to do the same thing that was done to my child to that individual if that were the case. Like, I could not imagine the pain that this woman was experiencing. But that story, and then another story, for example, is like, when Jesus was dying on the cross, he's sitting on a cross, hands nailed in, feet nailed in, bleeding out of his hands and feet, guts torn open, like literally shredding this dude's flesh in front of a crowd. And you know what his last words were? I always find his last words, I think Jesus' last words were the most interesting words of his entire life, of his entire journey, of his entire walk, of his entire everything. His last words were, "Forgive them, Father God, forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." Let's dissect that just a little bit, because I think there's a lot here to unpack, and I think it's worth dissecting. Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do. Imagine being tied up to some pieces of wood, to a cross, nailed to it, bound to it, tied and nailed to it, and then people are like jabbing at you with like whips, metal, like just like nails, hammers, just beating you to death. Pure physical pain and agony, torture beyond what we could ever comprehend in our lives. That very, 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 very few people, like very, very few people have actually experienced this, like in our entire population, right? And as he's going through this horrendous pain, he didn't say, "I forgive them, Father. God, I forgive these people murdering me," while they were murdering him. That's not what he said. He didn't say, "I forgive them." He was literally already beyond his own forgiveness. He had already forgiven in his heart, and he had accepted his fate. And he literally did not even need to vocalize that he forgave the people that were murdering him in real time. No. What he did was said, "Forgive them, Father, for they know not what they do." He was asking for their forgiveness. How, like, the amount of compassion and empathy and grace and love that it would take to express that idea quite literally while you're being murdered is the perfect example of the capacity of empathy, compassion, and love that we are capable of when we fully and wholeheartedly choose to unconditionally forgive. That is the deep reservoir of love that we have as a human being. That's what we get. That's who we are. That's our being at its core. Like, that's not something that is like, oh, that's like not possible. Like, that's literally attainable. Mind you, we're probably never going to be in a position where we're being murdered and like trying to forgive our murderer in real time. However, the next time someone offends you, or the next time someone sincerely hurts your feelings or abuses you or whatever, remember to forgive. And remember to forgive unconditionally. But do not forget. Remember the lesson. Remember the habits. Remember the patterns. Learn when and where to have healthy boundaries. But always, 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 always choose to forgive. I love y'all. Thank you for being here. Holding you in my heart, holding you in my mind, sending you all the love, all the boldness, and all the bravery that you need to step into forgiveness in your life today and forevermore. Peace.